In this week's episode of The Truth About Business, you'll discover these 3 golden business insights. Number 1, the business secret that JP Morgan, the American banking titan, paid £25,000 for. Number 2, the one simple question asked by the 7-year-old daughter of this week's guest that provided him with the drive and motivation to build a successful business. And number 3, are great leaders born or are they made? And what does it really mean to be one? So stay tuned for all of that and so much more on this week's episode of The Truth About Business. I'm Benjamin Brain, and by day I'm a director of a multi-award-winning family-run business. And by night, I interview successful business owners to share their journeys, experiences and truths to serve as inspiration, motivation and first-hand education for like-minded entrepreneurs and wantrepreneurs to fast-track our own business success. This is the truth about business, told by those who have been there, done that and have the scars to prove it. From the good times to the bad, the marketing strategies and sales tactics to the productivity hacks and success habits. I'm here to give you the de-sugar-coated version of what it's really like and what really works. If you're thinking of starting a business or are already in business, I created this for you. So let's get started. But first, thank you to everybody that's left a 5-star review on iTunes, and especially this week Jim Thorpe, who's not only a fantastic guest on a previous episode of the show, well worth listening to after this one, but also left me an amazing 5-star review on iTunes. So thank you, Jim. And if you enjoyed today's episode and you'd like a shout out on next week's show, you know what to do. In this week's episode, I talk business with Steve Gandy. After spending 22 years employed and becoming what most of us would define as a successful businessman, playing a crucial part in growing one business from a turnover of 60,000 to just under 5 million, and in his last employed role leading a team of 50 plus people, Steve realised that he just wasn't happy and there was a major change that needed to happen or things would only get worse. This led Steve to discovering what he was absolutely certain was his true purpose in life, guiding other business owners not just to achieve outstanding results, but helping them not to fall into the same traps that had led him to becoming miserable, unfulfilled, and burnt out. Fast forward to today, and through his business coaching and consulting practice, Circle Business Coaching, Steve now works with a number of hand-picked business leaders who are at the helms of businesses generating millions of pounds in revenue per annum. To find out more about Steve and the services he provides, check out www.cbcpro.biz, or you can find him on LinkedIn under Steve Gandy, Gandy spelled Gandy. This was another brilliant interview with an inspirational entrepreneur who is not afraid to tell it like it is. You know, success leaves footprints. So let's take a walk with perhaps one of the most learned and well-informed entrepreneurs I've met and one of my favourite people to talk business with, so I know you're going to get a lot out of this one too, Steve Gandy. So Steve, thank you for joining us this Sunday morning and welcome to The Truth About Business.
Thanks, Ben.
So this is the first episode that I've done live from the home office. So if anybody's seen that BBC News clip of the newsreader presenting the news and then the kids come toddling in beforehand, I've already got visions of that happening. So if it does, apologies in advance.
Well, you get lots of views.
Yeah, always helps for that. Yeah, they got 33 million, so It might do something for us. So anyway, so let's get into the interview. So Steve, can you tell us, if you had to really niche it down to one thing that is your expertise, what would you say is your speciality?
Well, for me, it's about giving business owners and leaders tools, implementation and accountability to get a business to where it wants to go. There's a great quote, and I think it was by Tom Peters, that said, a business is designed and engineered to give exactly the results that you're currently getting. So if you want a different result, you have to put a different emphasis on different areas. So if generally a business owner may want to build it to sell, then there's a certain road you have to go down. If there's issues with accountability with the team, again, there's a road you need to go down. And there's a lot of information out there that's widely available, but the biggest difference really is implementing that information. Often you can get into overwhelm. So my role is to really try and focus in, pin that down, and get people moving in the right direction.
So you've obviously been inside a lot of businesses in different industries, and business itself covers a whole variety of topics. But from when you initially start working with business owners, what's the one thing that you tend to see that seems obvious to you, looking from an outsider's perspective, but doesn't necessarily seem obvious to business owners and entrepreneurs?
I suppose if there's one thing that I see that would encompass a wide variety of problems, it's execution. Not enough of it. There's planning and strategy, which are all very, very important. But if you don't execute on that plan and strategy, it's a wish. And nobody wants that. Nobody wants to feel that way, because ultimately everyone's in business for a reason. It may be that you're a director and you want to sell the business and go live in the Bahamas. It may be that you just want to provide a great level of lifestyle for your people, whatever it may be. But irrespective of what industry you're in, if you do not execute on the things that you want to actually get done on a week-by-week basis, day-by-day basis, then the dream becomes too distant. So my role is to help push that execution in place. And sometimes that can be uncomfortable. And again, it's no different to, going to the gym, or if you're in an elite sports team, or if you're in an elite military team. If you don't execute, it's all for nothing. So that really is the one area that I find is most important. Culture is very important, strategy, all them things, but execution is the one that's missing from most.
What do you think it is that holds us back from executing, especially on executing on the things that we know are important, but just never happens?
Fear.
Okay.
Fear and lack of education. At the end of the day, if you've got, for instance, it's not unusual for me to work with a business that says, how's sales? Oh, sales crap. Okay, show me your marketing plan. I've got one. Okay, so we'll need to educate on how to create a marketing plan. So we create the marketing plan, what we're going to do online, what we're going to do offline. What's the purpose of it? Who you're trying to reach? What are you trying to get them to feel? And then after you've developed that marketing plan, is it being executed every day? If the execution has been done every day, there will be a result. Generally, if there is not action on the marketing plan, there will be a result, but you won't like it. And that often can come down to two situations. Either the marketing plan has been aimed in the wrong direction, which is fine because you can change that. Or number two, you've got the wrong people doing the job. And sometimes that is a major hurdle that business owners tend to hope will resolve itself, but doesn't.
So Steve, can you give us a bit of an example of a business that you've been into that wasn't quite getting this right? You helped them turn things around and it's now a very different story. What was happening before, or what wasn't happening, and what's been the difference?
There's a couple of examples. I'll not really name names, but there's two examples. One particular business was doing really well in terms of growth. Exceptionally driven gang, great guys. There were some elements in terms of leadership and maybe financial planning, marketing, some of the various basics that need to go into place that weren't really where they needed to be. Because these guys do execute and they do get things done, it was fairly straightforward to put some of these things in place, and the change in terms of the infrastructure, the right people have been brought on, the change in terms of the actual sales. This is a business that's targeting 25 million quid this year from 9 million 18 months ago.
Wow.
So these guys take it very seriously, and the leader is very passionate about education, learning, development of his team. So in that situation, it's almost like guiding a missile. That's kind of the easiest way to put it, Another instance is more about an individual. This individual was in an operations role, very highly accomplished in terms of being able to do, but had a real challenge around people, and found that it was very difficult to engage the team enough so that he wasn't always doing stuff for them. And that was a real challenge, and he went through some levels of crisis, and we got into it on one or two occasions, and he did have to go down in order to build back up again. But just giving him the right advice, the right books to read, completely changed his mindset. And as a result, within a very short space of time, like 2 months later, he was able then to feel far more confident, happy in what he was doing. But more importantly, he was leveraging the team underneath him, pushing those guys, training those guys to help him get to where he wants to get to.
What were some of the main changes in that mindset then? Where was he at before, and then what was the difference afterwards?
Well, one of the things, Ben, is to realise that in order to get to where a business needs to get to, or an individual needs to get to, there has to be a level of change. If there is a scenario where people generally feel comfort in doing what they're doing because they know the result. If you're then saying, well, I need a different result, and particularly if you're leading a team of people, then the people are going to get you to where they want to go to. It's not a situation where you just have to charge forward, being the leader, and then pull everybody behind you. The reality is you've got to go around the back of these people and analyse and see what they are and aren't doing well, and coach and train and educate those guys so that you can get more out of them. You can get a 10x leverage from these guys. If you're going to work twice as many hours, you might multiply your productivity by 1.5 times. So it doesn't really make much of a sense to have all these assets at your disposal and then continue to do what you've always been doing. And often when in leadership roles, it's one of the areas that I find is lacking most. If the people will get you to where you want to get to, so focus on the people. Absolutely imperative. And of course, the right people.
Where do you see most businesses going wrong? I think a lot of people and business owners and entrepreneurs are aware of it's about engaging with the team now and getting people behind the business and buying into the why and the purpose. Do you see businesses that are trying to implement that but aren't quite going about it in the right way?
I think that's fair. There is a level of awareness that when I start working with a team, first and foremost has to come with the leaders. They understand what they're great at, they understand what they're not so great at. And in order to get the team to do what you need them to do, to get a different result, you have to sell them a vision, you have to sell them a dream. Now, first of all, you have to sell that dream to yourself. And you have to understand what that business is there to do. So many business owners, they end up in a position where they are running a business, often because they've started it, the old story about, well, I feel I can do this better, so I'll start it. But the problem with that, there's a lot of neurological entanglement that comes with that, and people believe that they've got so far by behaving in a certain way, therefore they should continue to behave in that way to get what they want. But it doesn't work that way. You have to go into a situation where you add value rather than time. So when it comes down to the development of the people, first and foremost, you have to have a vision that's exciting to them. Because if you don't, what sort of journey are you taking them on? What sort of adventure is it going to be? Because if it's not an exciting adventure for you, there's no way that it's possibly going to be translated down, because people aren't silly. They'll know that the integrity comes from the heart. And if you really believe that you want to make a difference, whether it be for social reasons or economic reasons, or you really believe that there's something that the world needs that you've got to give them, first and foremost, you have to have that passion and that vision in yourself and push that all the way down. When that isn't emphatically pushed forward all the time, like every day, there's relevance to it every day. There are things around the office that remind people of what we're doing and why we're doing it. It becomes very, very difficult at that point to guide people in the right direction and for them to make their own choices as to where they need to go to. So I think that the big thing is that it's the consistency in making sure that the message is clear, exciting, engaging, and relentlessly pushed forward. That's pretty much it.
Yeah, and I think from personal experience, I think that the first step is not knowing that you don't know anything and finding out about these business foundations, the vision, the values, the purpose, etc. The next step is taking the time to put them all in place and get feedback from the team and create the materials. And again, from my own experience, I think the next step is, as you say, just being relentlessly consistent, talking about it every day, which is a challenge. And I think that might be, from my own experience and from talking to other business owners, where some people start to fall short, is that relentless, just repeating yourself to keep everybody engaged, to keep everybody on board, starts to fall by the wayside, particularly when things start to get busy or there's problems that need to be fixed. So what are some of the ways that leaders of the business can hold themselves accountable to be talking about it every day and not have the fear of talking to the team about where the business is going, what it's all about?
Ultimately, if a leader finds themselves doing stuff, busy work, then they've got to be looking at that and saying, why am I doing this? Have I got a person in the business that should be doing this for me? If the answer is yes, then it's all about the leader saying, how can I add value? One of the greatest books that I'd highly recommend people listen to on this is by a guy called Patrick Lencioni. And it's called The 4 Obsessions of an Extraordinary Executive. And that really outlines exactly what we're talking about here. From a leadership perspective, as the director, the CEO, whatever position it may be, if you are leading a team, it's a question of how do I add value, not what can I do more of. So it's the reason that people fall into the trap, as you talk about, Ben, is difficult. We call this the soft stuff, if you will, the values, the behavioral side of things. The pushing of a vision and a mission is very, very important, but it's not urgent. So as a result, people will fall into that, I've got to get something done. And that is very linear, i.e. it's easy to do. It might be challenging, it might take time, but it's how to do it. And it's that knowing that makes it more attractive to do on a daily basis. Because when you're sort of looking at the softer stuff, there is a level of uncertainty there. You don't know what the outcome's going to be. So you have to be consistent and pushing it through. And that's really the idea, to try and make sure that the noise, the distractions are minimized from the doing perspective, to start working more and being more disciplined in getting the message through to the people. And if you can do that, incredible things start to happen. You know, you will get full engagement from the team. They'll start to really light up. And it doesn't take a huge amount to actually do that. But if the people underneath don't believe you believe, they won't believe. That's what it comes down to.
So to the business owners and the leaders that are out there at the moment that are doing too much of the doing, what are some of the tactics that they can implement to offload some of that, so that the important stuff is still being done at a business level, but these visions and values and purpose that really drive a business and take it to the next level are also being implemented?
Try and find some time in a week. That might be, you know, there's a phrase again by Tom Peters, which is MBWA, management by wandering around. What that's ultimately talking about really is identification of blockages, of roadblocks, of how can I help? Because ultimately a leader's job is to remove the barriers and the obstacles for other people to be able to do the best work. You can't do that if you're constantly sat in front of an email or dealing with some other administrative busy work. I'm not to say that that isn't important in some aspects, but it is. And if you can carve out 8 hours a week, you know, and you're 40, 50, 60 hours a week, 8 hours to work with your team, that will be the first place to start. And one of the ways to do that is, I can see on your wall here, you've got a little diary about how you want to plan and map out your week, which is great. Identify what you want to get out of your week. So at the end of the week, you can actually turn around and say, I've had a good week this week. It's been useful. It's been productive. I've done some meaningful work. Because a lot of the other things that are very interesting is that often leaders that I work with will not see their value. So as an example, one particular business I sort of say to the director there is that, you know, you have 70 people under you. Go and spend some time with them. Because although you're just you and we spend time together, if you go down and talk to somebody on the front line for 15 minutes about their family or their life or any things that you can remove for them, that's the highlight of their week. But
there's not a tangible result that you can see on a spreadsheet from that, is there?
Exactly right. And that's why people tend to not do it. There's a great guy called Jim Rohn who's fantastic, and, you know, he's all over YouTube. And he says a question about, well, the old phrase is an apple a day keeps the doctor away. So why don't people do it? You know, again, you can't eat 7 apples on a Saturday. that doesn't work. If you knew that smoking 1 cigarette meant that you immediately had lung cancer, you wouldn't do it. So it's all about consequence and recognizing that the urgent but not important stuff is a consequential value. If you put the time and energy into working with your team as a discipline from a leadership perspective, you will get to where you need to be far, far quicker, because you are helping others to get you to where you want to be. And it's far more rewarding from a leader's perspective. The flat line with a lot of this sort of stuff, people will bring me in and say, okay, I want to be out of this business in 2 or 3 years. Okay, great. What are you going to do? I'm going to sit on a beach in the Bahamas. Okay, great. So the first thing we need to do is analyze you, and then we need to analyze your team, and then we can put the tools into place to actually help you do that. So those leaders that aren't willing to look at themselves first will not make it. They will be absolutely banished to live a life consistently delivering what they're getting at the moment. And nobody wants that. So that's not what it's about. So we've really got to firstly understand, what do you want from the business? From a financial perspective, yes. Do I want to build it to sell it? Do I want to do other things with my life as well? Do I want to be philanthropical? Or do I want to run multiple businesses? All of these things are very doable, but there has to be a timeline. And when people sort of look at me like I'm crazy and I talk about this, if I was to say to somebody, where do you want to be? Okay, I want to get out of this business. Okay, how long are you going to give yourself for that? I'm going to give myself 3 years. Okay, 3 years, great, okay. We've got 156 weeks. Let's get to it. And it's that level of urgency, just that reframing of the time that gives the level of urgency. And, well, how am I going to do that? Well, the first thing you need to do is put time in your diary to work with your team. Because at the moment, how much time have you got into your team? How much time are your team working on themselves, educating, reading, listening, working with their teams? So the more that you can do that, the more you can leverage the output. And that's really what gets you to where you want to be.
Now, you mentioned a few moments ago that the leaders who are totally focused on themselves are sort of destined to be stuck in the position that they're at now. Have you seen instances of where you've come across business owners like that, but after education and seeing the results, etc., they have managed to change that within themselves? So is it something you are born to be, or can you change it through nurturing? It's that old nature versus nurturement argument, isn't it? So,
it's a difficult one for me to answer because I work with people that want change. And now they may want change for various different reasons. They may want to get their team more accountable. That's a common one. Well, I need my team to be doing more stuff or get better results or anything else like that. Well, the first question I ask them is, well, what are you doing to coach them? What are you doing to educate yourself? Because this is not a magic pill. Coaching and consultancy, whatever, is more about making people aware and taking responsibility. So from a leader's perspective, if you're not willing to learn, if you're not willing to adapt and take a different approach, you're not going to get a different result. It's not a case of saying, okay, I'm going to stay this way, but I want everybody else to be different. That will not work. So in answer to your question, I don't engage with those kind of people, just simply because they don't excite me. If they're so dysfunctional to believe that it's everybody else's fault, then they are destined to just continue to do what they've always done. And in terms of the way that I operate and the seminars that I do and things like that, I encourage people to come that want to learn. Again, another great phrase I heard the other day is the mind has got to be like a parachute. It's got to be open to work. Kind of like that. Very, very true. Yeah. Some people have it, some people don't. Can leaders be made? I believe they can be made as long as they've got that prerequisite notion to learn more and not have the ego and the pride that comes with, I know it all. Because as soon as that happens, mentally everyone shuts down. Nobody cares anymore. So that's really what it comes down to.
So we're on episode 22 now, I believe. And cool. I think that most of the guests that I've had so far have talked about the importance of having a coach or a consultant or a mentor that's really helped them to grow the business and get to the next level. Why is that? Why is having a coach such an asset for a business that is prepared to be open-minded?
You can apply to business the same things you can apply to sports, the same things you can apply to the military. First and foremost, if you are, let's say, a football team, the prerequisite of being in the team is you want to be in the team and you're prepared to do what it takes to be in the team. Once you've got those raw ingredients, then from a coaching perspective, we have an objective. So the objective may be to win the Premiership title. Okay, what are we going to do to do that? And how are we going to do that? So formulate and strategize a plan. Each one of that will work down and break down into certain actions that each individual player has got to do in order to play their part. And that will go right down to as far as nutrition, to make sure that they are build themselves correctly to be able to execute on the task that they're there to do. So they take accountability of a certain level of part of the plan. And it's really no different in business. A coach can see things that the business owner can't, can train and educate when necessary, can ask the right questions to get a different level of answer, reframing a lot of ideas and thinking that may exist within the business that isn't necessarily there. My job really is to raise awareness and responsibility. What I mean by that is to ask questions that derive a different level of activity. If you ask great questions, then that can lead to great education, which can lead to a better level of answers. A better level of answers can live a better level of action, can deliver a better level of results. So it's all down to the questioning side of things. And obviously my advantage is the fact that I'm not bogged down by any of the doing stuff. I have clients in engineering, in quarrying, in all sorts of different things. I'm not bogged down by any of that. And for me, it's a system. The system is there. And if you want to build one business or 10 businesses, the system is the same. Fundamentally driven by great people with a strong vision and executed really, really well. So whether it's business, whether it's sports, whether it's military, it's the same thing. How do you take, from a military perspective, how do you take a gang of 16-year-old kids and within sort of 12 months turn them into a cohesive fighting unit that you're willing to send to a different country who are willing to die for each other? How does that happen?
That's a good question. It sounds amazing when you put it like that, doesn't it?
It really does. And it's all down to the belief of the leaders around them. It's down to the way that they shape those individuals. It's down to the way that they educate those individuals. So it's incredibly important that the leaders have a strong vision. And that vision is pushed all of the time and talked about all of the time. So the similarities are there, man.
Okay, and that leads nicely on to the last question for this section about your speciality, Steve. I know this is going to be a difficult question because there are so many different answers, but for a business owner or an entrepreneur or somebody that wants to start in business that's listening now and then perhaps not getting the results that they're looking for, they don't have these visions, values and purpose in place, what's one thing, one action that they could take away after having listened to this episode that they can implement that's going to kickstart the journey of, the next step will subsequently appear? What's the first thing that they need to start off with?
I'll go back to execution. I'll go back to that. The reality is that I'd far more have a person that executes and gets stuff done, and they may get it wrong, but they learn, and we can execute on a different level. To somebody that overanalyzes and plans to the nth degree, but the execution is at 10%. Give me somebody that executes at 80%. That way we can do something with them. So if you write your business plan on the back of a napkin in Nando's, great, do it. There's an old story about Andrew Carnegie. I think it was Andrew Carnegie. Oh no, sorry, beg your pardon. It was J.P. Morgan. And the story goes that in the mid-1920s, J.P. Morgan is walking...
He's the big finance guy.
Big finance guy,
yeah.
Was walking around New York, and he gets stopped by this guy, and this guy says to him, "I will give you the secret of success, and you will have to pay me $25,000. This is in the 1920s, when that's a significant amount of money. So J.P. Morgan thinks about it, and he says, "Well, I'll tell you what. You show me this piece of paper that's got the secret of success on it, and if I see that there's value there, I will pay you the money." The guy gives him the envelope with the paper in it. He opens it up. He takes a look at the information that's on that piece of paper. He says, "Who do you want the check making out to?" And what was on that piece of paper is pretty simple. Write down what you intend to do that day, then do it.
Simple as that.
This is not new. It's not new, Ben. It's very, very old. There are people that execute well and people that don't execute at all. When you get stuff done and you execute on a strategy, that's great because you can change it. It's never going to be right. Fail fast.
Yeah.
Go for it. Fail fast. Try and crash and burn as much as you can do, because you will learn so much from it.
And do you find that people are too caught up in trying to work out whether it's a good decision rather than just making a decision, giving it 100% and then adjusting or correcting?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. The guys that I work with that have the biggest level of shift, the ones that shift the needle the most, are the ones that will go for it. That will give something a try. Okay, look, I'm not talking irresponsibly, but they will take the time and be okay with the fear. I don't know how this is going to end now. Okay, let's do it anyway and see what happens. It's a fun game to play, but it's absolutely invaluable if you want to get to different levels and pivot in different areas that you may need to pivot to. So there's just nothing quite like that, whether it's if you're trying to develop a culture of execution and strategy, then you have to take some of these risks. As we were talking before, and one of my favourite quotes is, "Do something that scares you every day." That's been a counted to Eleanor Roosevelt. And whether it's true or not, I don't know. But even asking that question, I think from a business and a personal perspective, is a really tough question to answer.
Yeah.
For me, and possibly for you as well. But if you can ask yourself that question at least once a week, and you're going to say, okay, well, from a business perspective, what am I afraid to do? Okay, that's what I've got to do. Now what I'm going to do to do it.
Yeah. Yeah, and I used to have a journal, and one of the questions I used to write in it pretty much every morning when I remembered to do it was, what can I do today that scares me? But I found myself struggling to think of things that you can do on a daily basis, just in the normal run of life, that would actually scare me, push me outside of the comfort zone. And I think a lot of people, definitely myself included, are aware of these concepts. You've got the David Goggins, live outside your comfort zone, find something that scares you every day. But how do you actually discover what these things are that are going to push you outside into that comfort zone or outside of the comfort zone? One of
the questions, and you will have heard of this, the big hairy audacious goal that the BHAG that Jim Collins talks about, is something that I explore with all of my clients. What is a crazy, outrageous, silly goal, that you might want to get to in 10 years' time? Now that is to do something that scares you, because if you take a look at that on a regular basis, it's going to guide you. And I was listening to Susan Hallam talk the other day. She referenced this North Star, which a lot of people do. And that for me is an example of that. Because if you know that you're going to go for something completely outrageous, and every week you're saying to yourself, what am I going to do to shift the needle on that one there? That's going to be the big scary thing looking at you in the corner that you don't want to look at. But I've got to gaze into it and I've got to go through it. Yeah. Another great book is The Obstacle is the Way. It talks about Stoic philosophy, and Marcus Aurelius talks about this a lot, is that look to the most difficult and challenging thing that you could do that week and try and do it. As scary as it may be a personal issue, it may be making that call, whatever it is, but do it, because you'll feel better for it. I know we're both fans of the legendary Arnold Schwarzenegger, and he refers to it as reps. How do you go to be a bodybuilding champion? And he talks about, it's a great YouTube video, he talks about this. He always knew that he wanted to be a bodybuilding champion. So the pain, every single rep he was doing, he'd do with a smile on his face because he knew it was closer to getting him to where he wants to go. And that for me is a perfect way of looking at it, So when it comes to do something that scares you every day, it's a great idea, very difficult to do. But if you're able to look at something from a big, hairy, audacious goal perspective and say, okay, what am I going to do today to have a go at that? That can be a scary thing, but also hugely liberating.
Yeah, I like that. I like that way of looking at it. So that has definitely framed it in a different perspective that I know I can work with now. So I'm excited to make the most of that.
I mean, that can happen, Ben, in obviously business. We talk about business a lot, but it personally as well, because at the end of the day, one of the things I always push with my clients is that the business is here to provide you with a lifestyle. It can't be something that just is your lifestyle, because at the end of the day, when you're on your deathbed, nobody wishes to spend more time at the office. That's something that people don't realise. And again, still too many people I work with spend too much time on work. Find that balance, Can you get what you need to be done in 40 hours? No. Well, you're working wrong. You're not doing the right stuff. You're doing other stuff, productive stuff. If you're doing productive 40 hours worth a week, you're doing really, really well. So distractions come into a lot of it as well, and they take time away from what the most important thing is. On my website, I recently did a survey, which was back end of November, about what was most important to directors and leaders, and a very large proportion of them, why am I doing it? I'm doing it for my family. Now everybody says that. Okay, great. So what holidays are you going on this year? What sort of revenue do you want to pull out your business to make sure that you've got, the house, the car, the lifestyle that you really want? Let's start there, because this business is there to give you that. And often it is a case where that people just don't know enough. They aren't educated enough to know how they can get to that point. So all of these different things, when you sort of take a look at it, there's got to be a realization that this business is a system to give me something. What is that? And then go get it.
So your own story, Steve, can you give us a bit of a summary of your own career from sort of leaving school or college and right up to where you are now, so we can get a feel for where you've been, the ups, the downs, the challenges, the triumphs?
So I left school when I was 18 when I left school, and I left with a diploma in design. So I went to work with, it was me and another chap and his wife, and we worked in Preston, which is where I'm from, in an old cotton mill that was transformed into industrial units, and we were a sign making company. So there was me, him, his wife, and my job was to design things on an old Apple II computer. This was back in, when would it have been, 92, maybe something like that. So very early on was engaged in the business. We pushed that business over the period of the 14 years that I was there. Eventually it's doing about 5 million quid. I'm production director at that point. We've got various different high-level clients on board, and there was a lot of growth through that. But basically it was a case of, it was perfectly fitted to me because I tend to be a bit of a doer. So there was deadlines every day, there was new things to learn. From a managerial perspective, it wasn't good for me, but we were successful because we executed. Then as things happen, you start to get the itch, and so there was a bit of a trigger in the business that meant that I decided I'd always had this yearning to do my own thing. So I decided then that was the time to do it. So I stopped doing that, and for the next year tried to start a business in my own creative sort of graphic design type of thing. As it happens, I got noticed by a friend of a friend, and this particular chap owned a business in the automotive world, and he could see that I had some managerial background as well. So he actually encouraged me and asked me to relocate from Preston to Chesterfield, where I am now, to run this business, which is what I did, and I did that for 8 years. In the automotive world, there are a lot of challenges on price. We had a distribution network, we had a retail network with actual branches, so it was quite multifaceted. But the biggest issue I came across after about 4 years of being there was entrenchment in thinking. There was no real desire to change too much from the people, not necessarily from the leadership, but from the people. And that ground me down to the point where I did feel incredibly trapped at the end of that. And we were talking earlier on about triggers, and there was one particular trigger for me that happened, I think it was in the summer of 2014. I had an email, and this email just sent me into a bit of a tirade at that point, the timing was right, though. So I'd only had two jobs before, so I didn't know how to get a job. So I engaged with a coaching company that would help me put together a decent CV.
So this trigger email, did that trigger you to actually hand in your notice and leave the business? Or were you, right, now I need to start building something for myself, and you started making these inquiries in your own time?
It triggered me to leave the business.
Okay.
That's all it did.
What was the email?
It was.
We want the truth.
In all honesty, it was nothing.
Yeah.
But all it did
It
becomes
was
a
out
point
of context.
and it sort of pushed me over an edge.
Yeah.
But I was very close to that edge anyway. You know,
Okay.
it wasn't like it was completely out of the blue and now that's it. I've just lost it. I was very close. I did feel very trapped, and a lot of business owners that I talked to feel the same way. I'd not helped myself because I hadn't really learned or educated myself. You know, I was effective at the doing, but it only took me so far. You know, and I joke about it, but the only book I read really was the Da Vinci Code, which is great, but it didn't help me. So I got involved with this careers coaching company because I just didn't know how to get out there. And my first idea was just to get another job. But I was very purposeful in another thing that I think is very important is visualization. You know, I said to my wife at the time, I'll be out of this business by Q1 2015. I didn't know exactly what it was going to be. But anyway, I embarked on this little journey of putting together a CV, which sounds dead simple, but it cost me $4,000. So it was a little bit more complicated than that. But that actually got me noticed by a coaching company who contacted me just with out of the blue phone call. Huge believer in the universe will deliver what you actually focus on. I just honestly believe that, the law of vibration. I think there's something in there. So I get this phone call in January of 2015, and this coaching company had said to me, we'll show you how to do this sort of stuff. We think you'd be good at it because you're a general all-rounder. You've been there before. And that was it. You know, looked at it, did some investigation, did some research. What is coaching? And then realised that had I known what it was, that would have helped me not be miserable for 4 years, because I was. And it wasn't a lack of effort. I was putting in 60 to 80 hours every single week. Sunday was a work day for me. Absolutely blinded by keeping going, keeping moving forward. It'll all be good when. You know, when my wife and my daughter say, "Are you working again?" "Yeah, working again. But don't worry, it'll all be good when." But I was the one that was wrong. I was the one that was delusional. And as part of my transition, my come to Jesus moment, Jim Rohn was at the centre of this for me. He was a big educator in my life. And the other quote that I really love is, "If you will change, everything will change for you." And again, that's the second one. Talked about the Eleanor Roosevelt one. The second one is that one for me, because it's absolutely true. If you will change, everything will change for you.
And would you say the opposite of that then? If you don't change, nothing else will change?
100%.
Yeah.
Because I was living embodiment of that. And all that led to me was 4 or 5 years of pretty much misery. Yeah, we had, financially, it was going in the right direction, but it was empty. There was nothing meaningful in it for me, you know? So had I had a coach or even a consultant back then that was challenging me, you know, what are you reading? What are you listening to? How are you training your team? Just asking simple questions now that we talk about a lot. It would have just changed things. It would have accelerated and made me far happier, because that's what it's all about. So at that moment, I realised that that's what I was here to do. You know, I've always had a passion about fitness and health, and there comes a level of discipline with that. So I thought, well, how about doing this from a business perspective? I just didn't know that people like me existed. So that was it. Instantly changed.
So it was literally like a light bulb moment.
Absolutely.
This company called you, they told you what being a coach was all about, and then that was it. Bang, this is what I want to be.
Very next day I went in to see the chairman. I said, this is what needs to happen. I'm going to be doing this. And to be fair to him, a great guy, said, "I think you'd be great at that, you should go for it." You know, so, and that was it. And so by the end of, it was actually, I just missed the quarter. It was the end of, middle of April of 2015. I started out on this journey, but it came from a place of pain. And it also, at that point, ticked another box, which was about the fact that I had this yearning to run my own business. And I'm not going to say it was ever going to be, it wasn't scary, because it absolutely was terrifying.
Had that yearning always been there from day one?
From day one, not necessarily, but I think I mentioned that from the early days when I was in the other industry, I left that business to start, but maybe the conditions weren't right for me. My mindset wasn't right, but it never really happened. But it did lead me down a path that took me and ended at the point where I was able to start my own business.
Do you have any family history of business owners?
No.
Okay.
No, none at all. So it's not that I didn't have support. I absolutely did have support. So I got involved with this coaching company and invested a chunk of money to be part of them and to get the training and the education, and I had about 15,000 saved, and that was my runway. you know. So it was a case of minimizing costs, keeping things really lean, and then understanding what I needed to do to get clients. And it comes into the exciting and mind-blowing world of sales and marketing. And that's how it happened, you know. And the reason I didn't do it before, I would say, is fear.
You read my mind. Next question.
It's fear. It's fear of the unknown. One of the key principles, because I'm also an NLP coach as well, neuro-linguistic programming, and understanding a little bit about the mind, is one of the things I challenge my clients with is that there's 3 elements that we need to ensure happens for people. Number 1 is certainty. That's really, really, really important. We talked about the vision and everything else like that. They have to know what the adventure is, so they have to have certainty. And I think that when you step out into a life where you don't know, you absolutely feel that pain of uncertainty. I don't know how this is going to end up. Can I pay my mortgage? What if we get kicked out? What if? You know, the cortisol in your brain starts going crazy and you start talking about all sorts of useless beliefs that just don't serve you very well. The second thing is purpose. Again, people need to know how they make a difference every day. When you step into your own world and you start to create something from nothing, which is your own business, you don't have that level of purpose. All you can turn around is saying, okay, well, I'm just going to do the best that I think I can do at this moment in time and hope something happens. So there's that part too. And then, of course, the third thing is money. So certainty, purpose, and money. Everybody needs a level of money for a lifestyle that they may want. When you decide to start your own business, you haven't got that background. You may have a bit of savings and all this sort of stuff, but you have to then make your own money. Nobody's giving it to you. You have to make it from nothing, from people that don't know who you are or what you do. Very scary place.
Yeah, you've talked about certainty, purpose, and money there. We know about the purpose aspect. You knew this was you now going forward, so there's no question about that. How certain were you from the day you left the previous employer in thinking that this was something that was going to work? Were you 100%? Were there only moments where you sort of got jitters and thought, oh, is this something I should be really doing?
That's a great question. I think that from my own perspective, I truly, truly believed that I could make it work. I didn't know how, but I truly believed I could make it work.
And do you think that's important for anybody else that's out there that's 100%. Thinking of doing it? You have to have that 100% belief that you are going to make this work no matter what.
Yeah. It's a very powerful driver. And it was, from my perspective, you sort of start out on the road from nothing. You know, Monday morning will arrive and you're sat there at your computer or by the phone or whatever in this new enterprise that you've decided to do, and you're thinking, now what? You know, and there was my accountability came in the form of my daughter, and she was, what would she have been? She may have been 4 or 5 at the time. And look, the key driver when anybody starts on their own business is pay the mortgage, you know, realistically. So I used to come home every day and my little girl just had asked the question, you got a client today, Daddy? You know, so that was kind of it. And she didn't care about all the stuff I was doing.
Yeah.
Did you get a client?
That's a great question, though, isn't it?
That's all you need, isn't it? You know.
And what did you have to tell her on the days when you didn't?
I just had to. No.
Were you honest?
No, yeah, that's it. No, and you know, there's certain things you do when you start out, and you know, and you're making the calls that are uncomfortable, and you're doing some of the marketing that isn't necessarily second nature because it's new. It's not that you don't want to do it; it's just that it's new to you. So you have to do the uncomfortable until it becomes comfortable. And one of the key things that was a trigger for me was I remember being sat at my computer in my office and we'd been for a walk with my little girl. I've told this story before, but I was with my little girl and we'd been for a walk around a park, and she gave me a little pine cone. And she said, "That's for you, Daddy, on the success of your new business." I thought, wow, no pressure then. So I went back and I blue tacked it to the top of my computer, to my screen.
Yeah.
So it was a visual reminder for me that get it done. That's it. Execute. You know, do what it takes to get that, and don't let them down. And that was my absolute biggest fear. I let them down. Not about me, because I knew I could go and get another job. But this was an opportunity. My wife had, you know, she was working, so she was supporting. We were burning through savings, but keep going. Be relentless and keep moving forward. So I'll never forget that. And that was always a real key trigger for me.
Do you still have the pine cone?
No. Oh. I don't know where it is. That's a really bad of me, isn't it?
Oh, your daughter's not listening.
Just crushed her dreams. No, I don't have it, Ben. I don't worry. I think it may have just decayed. I don't know.
Okay. You planted it in the garden.
Yeah, but it's. I think everybody needs that. When you start out in any business, it's a really scary place to be. And to be fair, it's not just at that point. It is at the point when you start taking on people. And you start to think, right, now I'm accountable for these guys' mortgages. That can be just as scary. And I don't know how to make payroll, or I don't know how to make more money, or I don't know how to get these guys more accountable. That can be a scary place too. So, yeah, but as far as I was concerned, I believe that there has to be a level of emotional trigger to get you to do the action you need to take.
And so roughly then, between the day that you left the business to generating your first income as the new business, Circle Business Coaching, what was that sort of time frame?
Probably 3 months.
Can you remember how you found your first client?
It was through telemarketing, primarily. This was 8 years ago. No, sorry, beg your pardon, 2015.
5 years ago.
5 years ago, yeah. Maybe 2014. It was through that, and then it was through consistent follow-up. Basically because I needed to, I needed the income, as everybody does. So that's kind of where it started. And then from there, bearing in mind I'd run a team of sales guys. So if we needed a 10% increase in sales, I'd say, go and find a 10% increase in sales. How do I do that then, Steve? I don't know. You're the sales guys. Go do it. And now I've got to do it for myself. So very quickly I realised that I was absolutely shocking at sales and marketing. Didn't know it. Had some very limiting beliefs about slimy salespeople. Don't want to be one of them. Who wants to be one of them? Didn't really know how to market myself to try and do that. So I learned. I picked up books. I started to listen and understand and put in some plans and some implementation. Networking. There was a networking BNI, it was called. So I jumped on my local BNI chapter, which is a great organisation. Met some wonderful people there. We took that to a fairly significant size in the space of 6 months. But that, again, helped me to get on the phone, speak to people, overcome that fear of talking to people, because I wouldn't naturally say that I'm one of them people that will talk to everybody in the bar. I'm not. But when you have to do it because it's your livelihood, then things have to change. So it was a case of doing the uncomfortable until it becomes comfortable, and then also pushing out myself through LinkedIn, making contact with directors of local cities that I knew I could help, that needed the help. And fundamentally, pretty much everybody that I work with has come about through they've attended a seminar, an event of mine. I absolutely love doing those for people that want to learn. 3 hours, free, the best I've got. Useful information that if you put that into implementation in 24 hours, you would see a difference. Really, really important for me. And from that, some people have said, can we take it further? And some people have walked away and said, I'm good, thanks. So that's kind of how it's built, pretty much from there. I'm a huge fan of LinkedIn. I'm a huge fan of email marketing. I'm a huge fan of giving value to people as much as possible until they are in a position when the timing is right that they may turn around and say, can you help me some more, please? So that was kind of how it went. It's like anything, Ben. It's never a straight line. It's a jaggedy path. But as long as you're sort of moving every day, then that's the best way to do it.
And in those earlier days, obviously you've got a great track record now, some major successes. How did you sell yourself to a business owner who was looking for coaching or consulting when you had very little experience in that arena?
The only real thing I could say to you is that I had experience of running a business. So I knew what the pain was. And first and foremost, I tried to educate myself on how would I have made my pain go away, because those are true of any business leader. It's amazing how many business leaders I talk to, and the old adage that it's lonely at the top is incredibly true. It really, really is. I was lonely. I wasn't alone, but I was lonely, and it's not a great place to be. So having somebody that even somebody you can bounce ideas off, who does ask the right sort of questions, it's really, really important to have that if you want to move forward. So, if I was sort of getting involved with an IT business and they would say to me, what do you know about IT? Nothing, I don't know anything about IT, but I'm not here to do IT. I'm interested in helping you develop as a team, as an individual and as a person to get the business to deliver what you want. And then it doesn't really matter what the business is,
Yeah, so for every business, there's the technical side of it in terms of the product or the service that they deliver, but the actual business side is identical no matter which business or which industry. It's the same things that make a business tick, and most businesses are experiencing the same problems which can be fixed in a similar way. Completely, exactly the same thing. And a lot of it comes down to education and action. That's it.
The two biggest things, I don't know how to make more sales. Learn and execute. I don't know how to recruit. Learn and execute. Again, Tom Peters, who's a big influencer for me, was sort of saying, what's the biggest problem with CEOs in the world these days? He said, don't read enough. Don't read enough. They don't take the ideas out. There's a reason that Bill Gates has his think weeks, or did have his think weeks, where he takes a week out of Microsoft, as he did at the time, and he sits there, he reads for 18 hours a day. There's actually the Netflix documentary called Inside Bill's Brain.
Yeah, I've been meaning to watch it now. A friend mentioned it to me, and I've just not had the chance to. Well, I've not made the time to watch it.
That's good. I like it when you recur to yourself. And in that, you actually see him do it. You actually see him do that. He's got this fridge full of Coke, which can't be the best for him, and his meals, and he sits there and he just absorbs information.
18 hours a day.
18 hours a day. Yeah. Education's great, but you've got to just take that level of implementation too. And I get through a lot of books, as I know you do as well, and I just look to take one idea out of a book, and if I can do that, and I can create a new process or pass it to somebody else who I think it might be useful for, then that's the job done as far as I'm concerned with that particular book. But yeah, implementation again.
So you'd been employed by a business up until 2015 when you launched Circle Business Coaching. That was about 13 years employed.
Yeah, that particular business I was there, I think it was 2006 to 2014.
Yeah, but then there was the sign place before as well.
Yeah.
So what are the things that you enjoy now? What are some of the benefits of being the owner of a business? Everyone
likes to think that I suppose it's freedom of choice. For me, it's the ability to know that I can, because I educate myself as well, if somebody comes to me with a particular challenge that they have, I kind of know how to fix it. That's very empowering for me as an individual. And my job then is to help that person train, educate, implement those things. So that gives me a massive amount of meaningful opportunity in my work to do that. It also means that if I want to go forward with other projects that I might want to do outside of coaching, it's kind of, I can see it. This has to happen, this has to happen, this has to happen. So, and that's just purely because I'm always learning. I'm always interested in finding out what works, what doesn't, particularly in things like marketing, which is very fluid. So it gives me that sense of completion, I suppose, for want of a better phrase. I still get a lot of things wrong, as we all do. I'm still way too shiny object, which what I mean by that, for those that don't mean it, is that, I might go off in this direction and then do that for a week and then do something else.
Oh, I can relate to that. I'm sure many of us can relate to that.
So that can be a challenge for me, and I have to be aware of that. Of course, you get financial benefits of working for yourself, of running your own business. And it's just a case, really, I suppose, of being able to better yourself and saying, well, what do I want to get out of this year? Because I'm not a fan of New Year's resolutions in the slightest, because I think every day you can make a decision to make a change. And there's a chap called Steve Peters who wrote a great book called The Chimp Paradox. And he asked me a great question once, which was, what comes first, commitment or motivation? What would you say to that one?
What comes first, commitment or motivation? I would say motivation, because that then gives you the drive to actually come up with the actions to commit to. That's what I would say anyway.
Well, I'm with you on that. I said the same thing.
Okay.
And he challenged me and said, well, I would put together that it's commitment. Because if you commit to something, your motivation springs from that.
Okay.
Which I can see, I can understand.
Yeah.
As an example, I'm committed to doing an West Coast to East Coast mountain bike ride for charity in June. Now, that's my commitment. My motivation now is to train so that I don't die doing that.
But what was your motivation to make that commitment to do the ride in the first place?
That's a call. And that was the fact that I made a commitment to a charity that I sit as a trustee on to help them raise more money to do the meaningful work that they do, because the government's cutting funding.
And we were talking before, and for you, that's one of these scary things that you haven't been doing before, that you are using to push yourself out of your comfort zone. So you really are a man that lives what he preaches.
Yeah, I think that's so important.
Or practices what he preaches. Was the term I was looking for.
I think it's important that you do show integrity in terms of what you're doing on there. But again, it's if you work for somebody else and you decide that, okay, 2020, I might want to get a pay rise and do this and this, that might be okay. If you run your own business and you say, right, well, I'm going to introduce 10 new products into the marketplace and I'm going to have 5 holidays this year and all this, you've got a little bit more scope, to do what you want to do. So it gives more freedom, I think. And what it comes down to, a lot of the things with the guys that I work with, is that they want freedom too, because it is kind of easy for me because I am on my own. I don't employ a team of coaches. I've never had a desire to do that. So that makes it a whole lot easier. But again, I'm still a firm believer that, one of the projects that I'm going to be engaging in this year means that I have to employ 31 people to run a business that I don't know anything about. And that is kind of interesting and scary.
You're really going to be putting your skills to the test there.
That's what it's all about, mate. Crash and burn. I'll be very successful.
And what are some of the downsides that you've experienced of being a business owner, particularly a sole business owner?
I think one of the downsides, just in terms of what I do, is keeping energy high. I feed off energy. The right energy is very important to me. It doesn't matter whether it's at the gym or when I go into a business, I bring the energy with me. And if I'm in a business where the energy isn't there or the energy isn't right, it's making that decision to cut that client off. Because you are cutting a revenue source off, and more as well, you're kind of walking away from an opportunity to help. But at the end of the day, you can only help those. I can only coach the coachable. If somebody decides that they want to win a Division 1 trophy in football and they're currently in Division 3, do you want to win Division 1 trophy? Yeah, I do. But I'm just going to finish my pie and my Greg's pasty first. That's not going to get you to where you want to get to. So those sorts of people, I have to decide to walk away from. And again, it's fundamentally tied into revenue side of things. But I'm very fortunate now to be in a position where I work with great people, and I've learned that lesson along the way that not every client is a good client, and you'll know that from your life and your work, and I'm sure that every business owner is the same. So having the courage to move on, from everybody's perspective, can be a good thing, but it does have its consequences. But at the end of the day, that can only strive to make you better and stronger at what you do.
So what would you say is your proudest moment in business for yourself so far, Steve?
I think the ability to make a living doing what I really enjoy. And I know that's cliched, but it's very true. If you love what you do, you don't do a day of work.
I think it's the dream for a lot of people out there, most definitely.
I agree. And for me, I can say that's true. It's not without its frustrations, but when I take a look at what my life is now compared to what my life was, it's black and white. It's night and day. And what's exciting is the future and what we can do along with my clients, and also what else I can bring to the world that I need to bring to the world before I pop my clogs. So I think that I'm excited about what opportunities exist out there for me and for my clients. But yeah, the ability to do what I do on a daily basis, as cliched as it is, it's true.
What would you say has been your biggest challenge?
Recognizing the coachable. Recognizing the coachable for me. Again, when you start out, you're looking to make the till ring, you're looking to pay the mortgage. And people will say, yeah, I need this. This is something that I need. Great, let's do it. And then it's not done. So recognizing those that are coachable and those that aren't coachable for me is taking time. And there's always a situation where you turn around and you say, okay, well, I've got to give it everything. And when I find myself doing a whole lot of stuff for people, then I'm doing something wrong, I'm not teaching them well enough. But it's also a good recognition as to how I need to improve as a coach, to push that thing forward. So recognizing the coachable ones, and I'm not saying I'm past it, because you just never really know.
Are there a few telltale signs?
It's a difficult question to answer. I think not straight away. There are, as we go along, one of the things that I do now is, every client commits to a certain level of goals and activity, and I track that, and I just kind of say, look, as long as there's more green than red in a period of time, then we're on the right track, because it's never going to be a straight line.
What happens if there's more red?
We have to seriously consider how we go forward, because for whatever reason, things are not getting done that need to get done. And that's always a challenge for both sides, for me as a coach and for those as an individual. And I do jump in and roll sleeves up as a consultant now and again. If people are struggling to get a marketing plan done, right, let's get it done. Because, as I said before, the planning of things you can plan till the cows come home, but we've got to plan and then execute as much as possible. So if somebody's struggling to write a great email, I'll jump in and help them and train them at the same time. So yeah, that's been the biggest challenge really, and it's something that I think I'm better at now, but still not maybe strong enough to see the signs early, or good enough as a coach to see the signs early enough.
What is the definition of somebody who is coachable?
For me, it's somebody that has a level of ambition, that wants to learn how to be better at what they do, but does it. That does it as well. Because there's people that fit the first two criteria, but the third one becomes a challenge. Now, there are plenty of examples in people that I've worked with, because it's not just the senior leaders, I work with them in the management as well. And everyone's a leader in my eyes. So being able to say, okay, I'm going to commit to do this by this time and I'm going to get it done is a fairly bold statement to make. But those that do it, they see change. Even just, one particular client had said that, okay, I'm going to read a book. And this is a great book called The Chimp Paradox, which I mentioned before. And he hadn't read a book in years. I said, you sure you want to do it? Yeah, I'm going to read that book. And he read the book in a week. And he actually said it changed his life. Now, that's encouraging for me. That's somebody that's coachable. You can work with that. That's somebody that says, I'm going to say I'm going to do it, and now I'm going to do it.
It comes down to that execution again.
Always.
What does the future look like for you and the Circle Business Coaching and the other ventures that we've sort of alluded to?
Yeah, this year's going to be exciting. There's going to be a new project that hopefully kicks off April 1, which is, again, a completely different arena. This is in the restaurateur world. I've basically come up with a concept regarding healthy eating that I'd like to bring to the marketplace that nobody seems to be doing at the moment, that I'm very excited about doing. From a coaching perspective, I've got to make sure I continue to serve clients very well, as best I can do, and hopefully spread the word to more people. I'll be doing more seminars this year, but whether I actually engage past that point, I'm not entirely sure, because I've got to make sure I give time to the other projects as well. Just simply because I think, for me, I'm ready for it. I'm ready for a new thing, I'm ready for a new challenge, as well as doing what I do. So my time's going to be split between both projects. I have no clue how it's going to turn up. It's a fairly ambitious project to do in that space.
It's a BHAG.
It certainly is, mate. It very much is. It is a BHAG. Five venues in 5 years is the goal, and all I've got to do is try and bring everything I've learned to this point to actually make it happen. So we'll see what happens.
Sounds exciting. I can't wait to see how that progresses as well. So I'm sure if you were a little bit more local, you're in Chesterfield, I'm over here in Nottingham and Derby, it would be a place I'd be frequenting.
Well, the plan is year 3.
Okay.
We'll be in Nottingham.
All right, I'll hold you to it.
Okay, mate. I have to keep that in mind.
So a typical day in the life of Steve now, how does that differ from when you first started out in your business for yourself to compare to how things go today?
So typical day in terms of difference is more balanced now towards health and fitness for me, because I truly believe that if you get that right, it puts the focus in the right places. There's lots of studies that absolutely underpin the importance of exercise against neurological performance and diet, and I'm absolutely all about that. The understanding that people should understand that they are what they eat and they are who they hang around with. You can't get past that. Even my 11-year-old girl knows this. If I say to her, she's at a big school now, and if I say to her, well, if you hang around with stupid fat kids, what do you think is going to happen? Now, that might be a bit harsh. But even she says, I'm probably going to be stupid and fat, aren't I? Yeah, you probably are. But that's true. That is the truth. And unfortunately, we're so surrounded by this junk on TV, junk on the news, junk on the internet that people consume, rather than some of the other great stuff that is out there that you can actually nourish your brain with and encourage you. Because you've got, I talk about the 1440, which is you have 1,440 minutes in a day. What are you going to do with them? What are you going to do with the 24 hours that you have? You can fit everything in there. There's the only difference between, the likes of Richard Branson and somebody that stacks the shelves at Tesco is purely about what they consume mentally and what they do with that. Richard Branson doesn't get any more time than anybody else does. So very important to recognise. So, a typical day for me now is I'm up at 5, I'm at the gym at 6. I take specific supplements that I know work for me because I measure my blood work as well. And I test and measure a lot of things on myself, experiment a lot on myself as well. I'm conscious about what I eat, not to the silly nth degree. I do enjoy beer and burgers and all that stuff like anybody else, but I'm very conscious of the nutritional value of what I put in. So at the gym for an hour, and then usually, I have clients from sort of anything between sort of 8 and 9 onwards, sort of dotted around the place. If I'm out on the road, which I generally will be, because I'll spend maybe a morning or an afternoon with the client. If I'm traveling from client to client, I have a very specific routine, which is I'm not going to be tempted to eat bread and all that sort of stuff that makes me sluggish. We have a Nutri Ninja blender, which means that I can just chuck vegetables and fruits in and make a nice smoothie. I'll have a protein shake, I'll have a bottle of water, and I'll take some fruit and nuts, a bag of fruit and nuts that you can buy at Tesco's. And that is very sustaining from a physiological and a neurological perspective. That means that I can still continue to think and stay sharp. Again, there's so many people that just buy junk at lunchtime and then wonder why they have this lull at 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock. It's because you're just not feeding yourself right. I quit coffee just in September. I only have one particular type of coffee now that does work for me. But that, again, I was quite shocked to understand that I got tremendous headaches when I stopped drinking coffee. And when I did some research into it, it turns out that if you drink sort of between 3 and 6 cups of coffee a day, that it can shrink the blood vessels in your brain by up to 26%.
Wow.
So what I was experiencing was the blood vessels opening up again.
Right, okay.
And that gave me headaches for 2 weeks.
I think it's always, for things like that, it's difficult to describe the effects of what's happened since you've changed, because it's hard to remember how it felt when you were drinking coffee. But have you noticed a real difference in what have you noticed the differences?
Focus.
Right.
Focus and energy levels have been really important as well. So drink a lot of water as well during the day. Again, it's not rocket science, it's not new, but even if you sort of banned energy drinks in your workplace and just got a water machine in, you'd see a difference in your people. And so it's really important. So very conscious about what I eat from that side of things. And then, at the end of the day, any bits of wrap up I need to do with regards to actions to help clients out. But by 7 o'clock, pretty much fried at that point. Get into Netflix, just see what I can do to chill out and just watch nothing but garbage, just to completely neurologically relax. Love watching old Mike Tyson fights on YouTube and all that sort of stuff. And then, usually at 9:30, that's me done in bed.
Do you have a technology ban? Obviously, you said that you watch Netflix, but in terms of like checking emails and responding to client inquiries, do you still get involved with those after that 7 o'clock cut-off period, or is that you time?
Absolutely, I just don't do that. It's very tempting because it's on an app on your phone and it's really easy to look at. But no, I encourage everybody to just try and make sure that time is their time. So if I'm guilty of replying to clients at sort of 7, 8 at night, I'm breaking my own rule. So I'm not living consistently. So I don't do that. I'm not saying I don't look at them, nobody's saint-like. But if I do choose to reply, it will be a timed reply to make sure it fits in with that time. And it's not unusual for my 11-year-old girl to tuck me in at night. Because sleep is incredibly important to me. I say to my little girl, this is the best part of the day when I'm going to sleep. I don't have a huge amount of luxury things in my life, but I do have a really nice mattress.
Okay.
Which is super important to me.
Yeah.
In a super king size bed, it's just brilliant. Just the rejuvenation power of sleep is very, very important, and it doesn't change too much at the weekends. It's one of the legends that I really like to listen to is a guy called Jocko Willink. He's very, very disciplined, ex-Navy SEAL commander.
Yeah.
He talks a lot of
sense.
He's
all about the discipline, isn't he? Yeah, big fan of Jocko. Yeah.
Very much so.
Yeah, because he will, in terms of accountability, every morning on Twitter he posts his alarm clock on his watch, doesn't he? It's like 4:30, 4:50 and gets straight down to a workout. So, yeah, I know of Jocko.
Yeah, absolutely. So, again, at the weekends it doesn't really change much, but I think that if you can... One of the things that I find really useful for me is that I get 30 grams of protein in when I wake up, usually in the form of a high protein bar, and that helps in terms of giving me the energy I need, the slow release energy burn, because I'm fairly intense with the workouts that I do. But I think if you can get to the gym at some point during the day or get some level of physical activity, the neurological stimulus you get from that, everybody I talk to, if they get a morning workout in, it's just, I feel more energized, I feel more focused.
Yeah. And
that's a great gift to give to yourself so well when you do it every day.
Good way of looking at it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Definitely. So you've obviously worked with loads of different business owners, all different kinds of ages, different types of industries and business. What would you say from your experience and from what you know about business yourself are some of the key attributes that you tend to find successful business people have?
Learn. An insatiable ability to learn as well as implement. But, the books... The level of stuff that's out there, Audible, I know you use it as well as I do, but Audible is a great app because if you're traveling, there's always time to listen to a book. And again, Jim Rohn says another great quote, which is, you'll never get the great idea from the business book you don't read. And that's very true. And there's some amazing ideas out there. And every problem you'll ever face in your life has been lived by somebody else, and the solutions are out there in books.
Yeah,
I firmly believe that to be the case. So having an insatiable desire to want to consistently learn is something that, it doesn't matter what I say about things, but if you look at the likes of, Jeff Bezos, who is Time's businessman of the decade rather, Amazon has a culture of learning, consistent improvement in everything that they do. So all of the big boys, They do it, and there's a reason that they do it, because it absolutely works. So there are, there's some wonderful books out there that I definitely recommend that people get involved with.
So I'm gonna get you to nail down to one or as few as possible, because I know there's going to be a few on the list. So for anybody that's out there in business, what are or is the books that you would recommend the most?
Well, I knew you were going to ask me this question. It's a really difficult question to answer. So what I'd like to do is break it down into a couple of different sections.
All right, let's do it.
I look at from a business perspective. What sort of business books would I have had the most impact and maybe contain some of the greatest ideas? There's The Great Game of Business by Jack Stack, chock full of great ideas, a wonderful story as well, but really fascinating stuff. Measure What Matters is another one that I would say, from a business perspective, talks about key objectives that are measurable, that mean that you can actually move forward. It's very easy to say, well, we need to increase sales, right? By what and by how much and by when and by doing what? Those are the key objectives. And that's by a guy called John Doerr. And John Doerr is a very successful investor, but he also was a coach to Eric Schmidt, and Larry Page and Sergey Brin, who founded Google. And he started with those guys and developed these things called OKRs. And Measure What Matters is about that. It's about measuring those results. So again, those are a couple of things from the business side of things that people can use. I think from a marketing and sales perspective, this is again something that people need to be super passionate about. We talk about the business peaks and troughs. Part of that is generally that the marketing will be in peaks and troughs. But if you know how to market really well and ask the right questions and find your tribe of people that want to buy or are interested in what you have to say, you won't have them levels of peaks and troughs to a large degree. So with that in mind, there's a couple really that I'd really like to recommend. This is Marketing by Seth Godin. It's a wonderful book, very, very timely. It's pretty new. Marketing techniques have changed dramatically over the last 10 years, just purely because people are now smarter. The internet has made it easier for people to access information. The average attention span today is 3.4 seconds. You have to get your message across very quickly, but it also has to be meaningful to them. So Seth talks about that a lot. Sales Differentiation is a huge favourite of mine by Lee Soles. Very relevant in today's society about how you position yourself in the marketplace. And the final one is Building a Story Brand by Donald Miller, written by an ex-screenwriter, but fantastic for writing content. If you write content in the forms of emails or blog posts or whatever it may be, a great way to look at how you position yourself. From a mindset perspective, What You Do Is Who You Are by Ben Horowitz. Very new book. Talks a lot about the culture side of things, but again is very focused on recognizing that it's your actions that can often define the culture of a business. So that's very important as well. The Chimp Paradox, mentioned it before, a classic book. Let people understand exactly how your brain works. And the final one for that side of things is The One Thing by Gary Keller and Jay Papasan. Makes it very simple to sort of say, okay, what's the one thing I need to do today to move the needle on what I want to go, rather than a million and one things. And I suppose finally, leadership. We talked about him before, Jocko Willink wrote Extreme Ownership, 12 or 13 lessons that he learned as a SEAL commander and how he translates them into business. Runs a very successful leadership and management consultancy in the States. Brilliant book. This was the book that really helped a client of mine turn a corner mentally and shift his mindset from being a doer to a developer of people and developer of the team. The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team by Patrick Lencioni is another great one that talks about what it really takes to develop that side of things. And the final one is Start With Why. The classic by Simon Sinek, from a leadership perspective, helps really understand how you look at your business and create the adventure that you can then sell to everybody else. So I've not answered your question in terms of one of them, but I think if anybody's going to listen to this and wants some useful books, because I often get asked, what book do you recommend I read? There's different things for different people at different times as well. Because I don't know about you, but I can read a book now that I maybe haven't read for 6 months, and something else will stick out that I'm thinking, I'd have missed that before. And part of that is because from a neurological perspective, your pathways have developed so that you're now searching for different answers that you weren't looking for before. So you see things and you hear things that now are more meaningful to you that you may have glanced over before. So yeah, that's the reason why some of these are really well worth revisiting. So again, if people listening to this would like to take them books and just take the next 12 months to read them and put them through to the teams, that's my best shot at this moment in time about what.
Yeah, there's some amazing recommendations there. Some of them I've already got down, but there's a couple there you mentioned that have definitely put my ears up that I haven't got in the collection yet. And for anybody that's listening, if you want the links, all of the links to those titles can be found in the show notes at benjaminbrain.co.uk/Steve.Gandy. So there'll all be links to Amazon there. So definitely check those out if you're interested. Thank you for sharing those, and staying on the book theme, Steve, if you could write a book about your own journey in business so far, what would you call it?
That's a really tough question. I think it would be Get It Done.
Okay. Simple but effective. Give us a bit of an explanation to that one.
Yeah, I mean, purely just because I'm sort of wired that way, to get it done. But we have so many, all of us have so many sort of thoughts and desires, and the whole New Year's resolution thing we talked about before. A New Year's resolution to me is a complete waste of time, because every day is an opportunity to decide to do something different. And just because you get popped up on a particular day of the year and then decide you're going to solve world hunger doesn't necessarily make that happen. I see it a lot at the gym, and I know I shouldn't do it because it's a bit snobbish, but I go into the gym every January, and the treadmills are full of people that are walking on their mobile phones. And I'm not going to dissuade their desire to be fitter, stronger, faster, better, whatever it's going to be. But come February, them treadmills are empty. These are empty promises that a person can make to themselves. And in my world, that's the worst kind of thing you can do to yourself. So why not make a plan? Why not make a commitment to making that sort of change? And whether it's business ventures, or whether it's having a closer relationship with your family, whether it's giving back to charity, or any kind of philanthropical endeavor, I think Get It Done goes back to the execution side of things. Plan, yeah, great, all very well and groovy, but execute and just get it done. Now,
you've already mentioned 2 or 3 quotes throughout the interview so far, but if you had to pick one as your absolute favourite that you live by, which would it be?
It's the Jim Rohn one. If you will change, everything will change for you. I have it on my LinkedIn profile. It is absolutely the one that's changed my life. And I didn't realise it at the time, because a lot of these things you kind of don't. But there's a guy called Earl Nightingale that was kind of a prerequisite to Jim Rohn. And I listened to, there's a 15-minute YouTube video, which I'll gladly give you a link for, that I watched when I first decided to become a coach. And I was going through that sort of phase of being kind of accepted, if you will. To be a coach, you have to go through a due diligence process. Visualization was very, very important. And this Earl Nightingale clip is 15 minutes long, and I listen to it every day. Every single day I listen to it. And I could visualize myself helping and working alongside other business owners and leaders and whatnot. And that really got me through it. So from a visualization point of view, whether you want to build the business you want to build, or whether you want to build the physique you want to build the family you want to build, you have to see it first. Again, see it, believe it, you can achieve it. Very true.
Best piece of advice you've received?
Don't ditch the health. Make sure you continue to look after yourself, because you can grind away and you can build this stuff, but what are you doing it for? Doing it for the family. Well, you're no good to them if you're dead.
Or burnt out, or miserable, or stressed out all the time, not spending any time. Yeah.
There you go.
And so if you could take all of your experience so far and these lessons that you've learned and the quotes and the reading and everything else along the way, and you could visit 21-year-old Steve, but you're only allowed to pass in one piece of advice, what would it be and why?
It would be get it done now. The biggest thing I think that people that have got, so I've got an 11-year-old daughter, and I fully recognise that one of my, it's not a failing, because every single step you've taken has taken you to where you are now. But I so regret not doing this earlier. I so regret not having that vision earlier. And part of that, you asked me before, is any history of business owners in my family, and there isn't. So everybody that I've ever surrounded myself from a family perspective has worked for somebody else. So they've never had or understood the freedom that having your own business can bring. And that, for me, is something that my daughter won't suffer from. Whatever she wants to do, as long as it's passionate, she will understand how to make a good living out of that. So if I could go back to my 21-year-old self, it would be, don't waste the next 20 years, do it now. And that's pretty much how it would be.
Now, we're coming to the end of the interview. Now, Steve, I've just got a couple more questions I'd like to put to you before we wrap up for the morning. First one being, if we were sat in front of somebody here who's thinking of taking the plunge into launching a business, and you could give them 3 pieces of advice that would serve them the best to get them to make the right decision, but then once they'd made that decision, make the most of it, what would those 3 pieces of advice be?
It's a great question. I think the first one would be, will your product or service add value to somebody's life? Is there a marketplace for what you actually want to do? Number 2 is, are you passionate about doing it and do you enjoy it? And number 3 is, make a plan, any plan, don't spend hours doing it, and do it.
Okay, simple but effective.
Yeah. It's not rocket science and it's businessy stuff, mate. At the end of the day, it's about being passionate about what you do, truly believing that what you do can impact and help people. And I think if you're not just chasing the pounds, they're almost a side effect. But if you can have meaningful work, there's plenty of miserable millionaires out there. Plenty of them. There's plenty. You hear all the time about very famous, successful people that commit suicide. Why is that? Because they have no meaning in their lives. And there's people that exist on $2 a day that seem so happy. It doesn't stack up. So whatever you choose to do, some people want to have a gold-plated toilet, some people want to give it all away. Whatever it is, as long as it's meaningful to you, do it.
Yeah. Great advice. And I think sometimes people can see these quotes and pieces of advice as cliches, but the reason they're cliches is because they're true. And I think a lot of people are aware of, don't chase the money, chase your passion. And you think, well, it's easy to say, but when you meet people on a regular basis that have done that and seen the results it brings, it just totally brings it into a different perspective. So, no, thank you. Some great pieces of advice there, Steve. And my final one for this morning is, if people want to find out more about Steve and the services that you offer, whereabouts can we find you online?
cbcpro.biz is my website. There's some bits and pieces on there, some tools, some resources. There's going to be some seminars that I'm going to be doing this quarter. I don't often do them. I did 2 last year, so I'm going to be doing 3 again, just to get. It's great to get people in a room because
these are free seminars for
free,
people to turn up to. Yeah,
but they are. It's great to get people in a room so they don't feel alone. They don't feel. This is generally directed at leaders, owners, directors of businesses. But what often can be the case is that people do tend to think that, oh, I must be doing something wrong, because why do I feel this way? Everybody else is doing it really well and I'm doing it rubbish. That's not the case. The situation is that everybody's on their own adventure, and some are further along than others. So when you can get people in a room, my job there is to give them my best, the best things that work right now. And I absolutely love doing that. It's a great fun thing to be able to do. I'm pretty full up in terms of client availability, but I still have this desire to, if I could go to a seminar back in my previous life and listen to somebody like me give me some information, that would have helped me massively. So I've got to give back more and more and more and more. And everything's on there, obviously on LinkedIn, as everybody in the whole world is as well.
Yeah, and again, all of the links to the seminars, to the LinkedIn, to the website, they'll all be included in the show notes as well.
Brilliant.
Well, that wraps things up for this morning, Steve. I just want to thank you so much for taking some time out to share your experiences and your business truths with us, especially on a Sunday morning. So thank you for putting some time in for us.
You're very welcome, and as I said before, kudos to you for doing this, because it's a big thing, it's a commitment, and you're showing the persistence and the dedication to get your message out there. And I wish you all the very success with it, because there's people that make a great living doing what you're trying to do, but you're sharing knowledge to people in the local areas that need to hear it. And hey, the only podcast I listen to is the Tim Ferriss podcast and The Truth About Business. So,
wow. Well, to be mentioned in the same sentence as Mr. Ferriss is a great honour. So thank you for that, Steve. But no, that genuinely means a lot. So thank you. And yeah, exactly the same for you. Wish you the very best of luck for 2020. I can't wait to see how this massive project develops.
You me both.
We'll be definitely looking forward to trying that out. And as always, to all the listeners, thank you for tuning in. Really appreciate your support, and look forward to catching up with you on next week's episode of The Truth About Business. One final thing before you go. If you enjoyed this interview and want to make sure you don't miss out on the next episode with another real-life business champion, make sure you subscribe via iTunes, Spotify, your favourite podcast app, or by visiting my blog at benjaminbrain.co.uk and hitting subscribe. At the blog, you'll also find the show notes to this episode, which includes all the relevant links to the website, social media channels, contact details, and anything else that was discussed in the episode. Just type in the name of the guest, and that will bring that right up for you. And finally, I'm always on the search for great business owners who would be happy to spare just a couple of hours of the time to share their business experience with our audience. So if you know of anyone that would make a great guest, or you'd like to feature yourself, just let me know. Send an email to hello@benjaminbrain.co.uk and I'll reply personally as soon as possible. Also, if you've got any feedback, questions that you'd like me to ask our guests, or any other suggestions, I am definitely all ears. That email address again is hello@benjaminbrain.co.uk. So that's it for this episode. I just want to thank you sincerely for listening. I hope you enjoyed it. Stay hungry, stay fearless, get out there and make it happen.